So one of the things this is my hypothesis, is that for those universities that do not have an entrepreneurship center, they may have a college of business, but they don't have an entrepreneurship center. They may offer some entrepreneurship courses. But my hypothesis is that a certificate in entrepreneurship would be would be a great foundation for an entrepreneurship center, because it would address a lot of the needs that I'm seeing that universities have, and that is cross-disciplinary, involvement, the inclusion for all groups, underrepresented groups, first gen, et cetera, et cetera. And also, one of the things is that I can see where alumni would be interested in having access, maybe not to their certificate, but at least to some of the content that is part of that program, where they could, kind of bone up on some of the basic tools for entrepreneurship. And then also, as universities are looking to build ecosystems with the business community, that a certificate in entrepreneurship can provide a lingua franca for anyone so as part of the university or associated with the university, to go through to create a business or a social impact endeavor, but one that will have the stamp or imprint of the university's approach to entrepreneurship.
Yes. I mean, that's a long please So there's a lot to comment on there. So how would you like me to comment?
Well, I mean, that's my hypothesis. It is yet to be proven. So is it where am I off? Where does it make sense? Where is it, where are the challenges?
Well, first of all, I don't want to be presumptuous, because Brown does things in its own way, and it doesn't mean that that's the way it should work for everybody. Would it be helpful to give you the background on our certificate, and then?
Absolutely. I sent you probably didn't see it, but I sent a bunch of sort of general type questions.
No, I saw them. You're always extremely thorough, and I did see them. Yeah, and we can talk through them.
It's about your program,
or however you want. I just thought if I gave you a background, it may focus your hypothesis in a couple of different ways. And it'll also give you a sense of where I'm coming from, which, again, I don't want to impose on anybody. But so first of all, we launched Brown's first certificate, undergraduate certificate ever in anything. Brown has not had certificates previously. We're now not the only one. There's a handful of them. But I think Brown has been reluctant in general to over-credentialize. And that's consistent with, I think, the curriculum that Brown has fostered through the years. It's sort of minimalist. There's no such thing as a minor. You don't even have a major. You have something called a concentration, which is subtly different because it can be interdisciplinary. We can get into the whole Brown curriculum in general if you want, but suffice it to say, this is new, and it actually took some real effort to get it passed by the faculty, because I think appropriately Brown's faculty is cautious about over-credentializing, and in general wants to guide students, wants to encourage students to guide themselves through its curriculum rather than encouraging them to check a bunch of boxes. And so we don't have distribution requirements. But the certificate, as we conceived it, and I will say, and I'm proud of this, we we put forward our recommendation for our certificate, and I think the leadership liked its approach so much that they kind of backed into what a certificate in general should look like at Brown. So ours encompasses the following. First of all, it's open to anybody in any undergraduate concentration, so you can be studying anything. There are some limitations, like you can't be already double concentrating, have two majors, and then in addition opt for a certificate. Again, cautious about over credentializing, but in general, it's open to any student studying anything, and that's a good thing. The requirements are you have to take 5 courses, and I think you've seen some of this on our website. 2 required courses, including mine, 2 electives from across a very wide range of different kinds of courses, all over the curriculum, and all about some aspect of the way we define entrepreneurship, which is, as you recall from our last meeting, a structured process for solving problems. Right. And so, that covers a very wide range of different kinds of disciplines. And then a practicum course, your 5th course, in which you work as a team on a venture. It could be for-profit, it could be nonprofit, we're agnostic. It could be, a research methodology, a lot of different kinds of projects, but I will say dominantly for-profit. And you work on that for a semester. It's a course taught in cohort style, and you get mentorship, and you make a lot of progress on that venture. So if you satisfy those 5 courses, then on your transcript it indicates that you've earned a certificate in entrepreneurship. Is that clear so far?
Yes. Can you go into a bit about, you said it's the first one. How long did it take to put together? What were the challenges and pushbacks on that?
Yeah, I can. Let me fast forward and then I'll rewind. So fast forward, last year, so as of May 22 graduation, we graduated our first 14 students who had earned that certificate. It was the first year in which it was available. And what's interesting about that is the students represented a very diverse set of disciplines in which they were studying. So of those 14, they represented 7 different concentrations, which I thought was great. Not all computer science, not all econ, not all engineering, which is kind of what people perceive. And then this year, already we have 22 students who've committed to the certificate program, and they represent 17 different disciplines. And that blew my mind. I mean, in a good way, I was super excited about it. We were all very happy about it. When I told that to our advisory council, they were all really overjoyed, because they said that's what a certificate is supposed to do. It's supposed to engage students from all across the university studying all different kinds of things and bring them together to learn not a concentration's worth, but a certificate's worth of depth regarding a particular field. And so it's starting to go like this. It's like my book, See, Solve, Scale, and it's starting to scale. And in fact, just today I was in discussion with some of my colleagues about, oh man, how do we start to tee up more courses, because we're going to be at capacity soon. So that's the fast forward to where we are now. And then I can answer questions on that, or we could rewind to, I know, the process of getting here that you wanted to talk about.
Well, just a couple of more sort of just numbers. You said that there were 2 foundational courses. One of them is yours, and then there is a practicum, and then in between, they have to take 2 courses. But you said that is from a wide variety. So how many, what is that variety? Is it all entrepreneurship in other entrepreneurship courses in other disciplines, or?
So you'll see, there's a whole bunch of details here, which you can ignore, but down below, you'll see foundational courses, 2 of them, and elective courses include a biology course on the importance of intellectual property in
Yes.
biotechnology, an economics course on designing internet marketplaces, another economics course on venture capital, private equity, and entrepreneurship, a whole bunch of engineering courses, one called Transforming Society, Technology, and Choices for the Future, one called Managerial Decision Making, one called Learn Launchpad, one called Entrepreneurial Management in Adversity, one called Selling and Sales Leadership in the Entrepreneurial Environment, a public policy course on social entrepreneurship, sociology, a series of sociology courses, leadership of organizations, the future of work, market research in public and private sectors, law, innovation, and entrepreneurship. There's a university level course called Global Dynamics and Critical Perspectives on Immigrant Entrepreneurship in the United States. There's one on eco-entrepreneurship that's in conjunction with the Environmental Studies Department. There's one in conjunction with urban studies called Real Estate Development and through an Entrepreneurial Lens. And then there's another one actually not even listed on here called Gender, Women, and Enterprise in conjunction with the Gender Studies Department. And then it looks like on here you'll also see the practicum, which is that 5th course where you work on a startup.
And the are those are courses that were already extant, right? Or are these courses?
Not all of them,
Okay.
although many of them. And so it's a balance.
Were they modified because they are now part of the
No, not really.
okay.
I think, we gave the professors a heads up. It's funny, sometimes I hear that my course is now an elective. I heard the other day my course is an elective for computer science. And I didn't even know that. Nobody even told me. I asked a student, hey, why'd you decide to take the course? And he said, well, it's great that it's an elective for computer science. I said, what the hell are you talking about? And so we wanted to, be professional and let people know. But I would say no, the courses haven't really changed. And I'm not even sure we would say the new courses were there for the specific purpose of the electives. It was more, these are courses that we think should be offered, like eco-entrepreneurship, the real estate entrepreneurship, the gender, women, and enterprise ones are courses that we as a center think are valuable and any student should have access to. And so I don't think that I would describe them as specifically focused on the certificate.
Do you find that if I am a student and I see these 2 electives, but now I look at because it's just within the context of the certificate, I am more aware of these other ones, and it's like, oh, gee, well, I want to try some of these too.
Yes.
Even though I've, hey, I've already got my 5, certificate courses for the certificate. But my interest is piqued because of the connection.
Yes. I mean, that's true. I'd say in general, among all 3 of the buckets. I think when we spoke the first time, I mentioned the curricular, co-curricular, venture support buckets. And, they refer students, one refers students to the other 2. So somebody might take a course, not even knowing it's part of an elective sequence, and then get interested in doing our summer accelerator, or somebody in our summer accelerator might say, oh, this is interesting. I worked on a startup this summer. I'm going to go back and take some courses. somebody might be interested in the Brown Venture Prize competition. And so, it's not a linear pathway.
Yes.
There are some key entry points, but it's not required. The word requirement doesn't work at Brown.
Right. Yes, I remember that from the interview. One other question before getting into the development of it. In terms of, the 22 students that have signed up for the certificate this year in 2022, 2023, is it, and they're coming from, I think you said 17 different disciplines. What about the student profiles? Is it, are you hitting on the, I don't know, DEI?
It's a big
elements?
priority for us. We're
Yeah.
very deliberate about that. We have very deliberate outreach to the undocumented first gen low income center, very deliberate outreach to the Brown Center for Students of Color. That's true at the granular level for all of our programming and all of our courses, let alone for the institutional, certificate program. That is a big, big, big priority for us. I mean, I'd say, remember the subtitle of my book, how
Yeah.
anyone can turn an unsolved problem into a breakthrough success. I describe it in the book about some of our tactics, some of my own personal tactics for ensuring diversity and inclusion in my courses, recruiting students and encouraging them to stay and contribute. It's something that we're all learning. I don't know that I would describe any of us as an expert, but we have experience, and it's not like window dressing. It is a central theme of how we teach entrepreneurship. And so, if we ended up with a very undiverse group of all things, in all ways, not just gender and race, although those are critical. But it's one of the reasons I'm so proud of the fact that we have such diversity among the disciplines represented.
17, that's extraordinary.
I mean, honestly, that was a surprise to me. I mean, pleasant surprise. But when I thought about it, and I think about how diverse the representation is in my own class, and that's a required course, then it's, I guess, not totally surprising. But I'm thrilled that it's the case. I'm so happy to be able to say that to people. If I said, oh, it's just like a minor for econ majors, that would be failure, and I would not be proud of that.
Yeah. So for developing the certificate, there were all of those kind of basic questions that I had. How long did it take? What was the pushback? Why 5 courses? Why not 6? How did that evolve?
Well, this all started when, I report to the provost, and who's a wonderful person. Unfortunately, he's announced that he's leaving, and he's going to run Apple University, which is a cool thing. So good for Apple, unfortunate for Brown, and we're going to miss him dearly. And he and I collaborated really well together on this, and Jonas Clark, our associate director, and a few others contributed mightily to this. It was initially a blank slate. I mean, we were told, hey, Brown wants to launch a certificate program for undergrads, and we'd like for entrepreneurship to kind of lead the way, which, never scares us. I think it's probably appropriate. And so there was no template for what that might mean. And we just thought it up. I mean, Brown does and has had certificate programs for graduate students, interestingly, but it has never had it for undergrads. And so we kind of led the way on that. And again, like I said, I think what happened was the provost and the group looking at it at leadership levels liked what they saw, and they reverse engineered the requirements to resemble what we had come up with. And what I had done was to think through, okay, this 3-step process we have: see, solve, scale. what are all the courses available now in the curriculum already that we could use to help teach at least one of those elements. And so I remember in our proposal, I put together a rubric and I said, see, solve, scale, or I'm not sure I used that language, but, you know, find the problem, solve it on a small scale, develop a sustainability model. And then those were the columns. And then down the rows were all the courses I could think of that would teach some part of that. And we put together a formal proposal. It had to go, well, there were two steps. There was a formal proposal that wasn't our doing, that had to tee up the concept of a certificate in general, conceptually. And at the same time, in parallel, we teed up the concept of an entrepreneurship certificate. And if I remember right, the faculty had to vote on both independently. It had to vote, first of all, on the idea of doing a certificate at all for undergrads. And there was some pushback on that. And again, I think the most sensitive concern was this is credentialing. It's too pre-professional sounding. Why do we need this? Brown has never had minors. And there was some thought that this resembled a minor, although there's a distinction, an important one that we could get into. So there was some significant pushback, not crazy pushback, but I think sincere and reasonable pushback. And we had to clarify, no, this is not a minor. This is designed to be interdisciplinary between a concentration and others. A minor is where you have, like, you know, you're studying French, and to qualify for a major, you'd have to take 12 French courses, and a minor would just be fewer French courses, like, you know, 6 or 5. This is not that. This is where it doesn't represent what otherwise might be a major with more courses. It is pulling together in an interdisciplinary way courses and study from different disciplines, and that was appropriate for a center to do, because that's what a center is designed to do. And then I think it also helped when we described what we mean by entrepreneurship, and that it's a structured process for solving problems, and people could get on board with that. So it took a little while, but it went through okay. There was some nudgy pushback about the fact that we don't have all tenured faculty teed up to teach these courses, because we use a lot of adjuncts, we use a lot of visiting professors, we use a lot of lecturers, we use a lot of professors of the practice. I'm a professor of the practice. And it's not that we're uninterested in having tenured faculty do that. It's just Brown doesn't have a lot of tenured faculty focused on entrepreneurship. So we're eager for them to have, but at the time we were teeing up the certificate, there were fewer than there will be.
Was it in the sort of justification for a certificate, did the inclusivity, did that come into play, that, you know, what we're looking to do is for, you know, level the playing field for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, you know, is opportunity identification for all. And did that come into any of
Well,
the,
I think
not?
it did yes, it always does. As I say, that's a huge priority for us. And, you know, we had a whole diversity section in our proposal.
Okay.
But we didn't have to invent that. I think we literally just copied it from our website, because it states it very clearly there what a priority it is. I think it was more of a lot of people already knew our approach to entrepreneurship encompassed that, emphasized that, made it a priority. Others didn't. And so it gave us a platform on which to help people understand that Brown is in a good position to help students learn this methodology that is appropriate no matter what they end up doing in their career. That's why it didn't feel explicitly pre-professional. It wasn't like an accounting certificate or something. It was. And when I describe what we mean by entrepreneurship, it would be pretty unusual for somebody to resist the idea of teaching somebody how to solve a problem. It would be like saying, no, I don't want you to be teaching the scientific method. That's not appropriate for Brown. And so I don't think in my entire time at Brown, in 17 years, I've ever had somebody resist that or push against it. You know, they may initially question because they have kind of a more typical approach to entrepreneurship in their mind, that it's like our business incubator, a mythical approach. But when I explain, no, that's not what it is. And we have students who go off into public health and medicine and the law and military and the arts and nonprofit and governments and every kind of profession you can think of beyond Brown. And they all come back to me and they say, wow, I didn't realize it at the time, but now I realize why it was so important for me to learn this problem-solving methodology. It resonates.
Is for those Brown alumni who, you know, have not matriculated over the last couple of years and going forward, you know, I would think that, you know, gee, I wish I had an entrepreneurship, you know, had access to an entrepreneurship certificate when I was an undergraduate. Is that something that might be made available in some form for alumni?
That opens up a whole other question.
Okay.
Let me answer it in a couple of different ways. First of all, I've lost count how many alumni, almost every alum who's involved in some form of, you know, startup world these days and comes back to want to be involved. And we have an embarrassment of riches, as I said last time, over 500 alumni who are rolling up their sleeves and mentoring and serving on selection committees and all the ways that they're involved. Without a doubt, they all say, God, I wish this had been there. This center had been there when I was there. And I'm one of them, because I told you I was part of a startup that we launched when I was a student, and that we built and we sold to Apple in the late 80s. And we had none of this. I mean, there were 2 courses taught by a beloved professor, Barrett Hazeltine, who was the person who asked me to teach, still teaching at Brown, by the way, incredible. He's 91. And but otherwise there was nothing. And so, yeah, I'm among those many alumni who wish there had been. I don't always have alumni wish that there had been a certificate. Okay. And this is actually still an interesting issue, and it deals again with the credentialing issue. So let me just put it bluntly, and I'm happy to say this publicly. If a student came to me and said, hey, I'm interested in learning the rudiments of entrepreneurship, but I just don't really care about documenting that as a certificate, I would not talk them into getting a certificate. You know, if they said, I want to take 4 courses, I don't want to do the practicum because I've already gotten experience in that way. Or, you know, I want to take your course. I don't want to take the other required course. And then I'll take 2 electives and a practicum. Is that okay? Yes. It'd be like saying, would it be okay to take a handful of history courses, even if you're not going to be a history concentrator? Of course. I mean, again, I'll say this as loudly as anybody wants me to. I really don't care if a student officially documents as a certificate that they've studied these concepts. All I care is that they learn them, they master them, and then they know how to apply them in the real world. And so I don't get a lot of, I don't know that I've ever had any alumni come back to me to say, God, I wish I had had a certificate stamped on my transcript that I had studied entrepreneurship. So it's a little bit of a funny situation sometimes, because I really care about guiding students, at least suggesting lightly a pathway for them to learn entrepreneurship. Whether they opt in to the official method of getting the credential is really up to them. And I even don't know, is it useful? Is it valuable? So, yeah, you know, it's a funny position I'm in because I'm in charge of this certificate, but I don't really know whether have it being an official credential matters that much.
It is, along those lines, if I am a French major, studying, 18th century, 17th century French literature, that's my major. And I love this, but I also see that it would have limited commercial use when I graduate, except, if I want to go in and teach further. I'm generalizing here. Your problem solving approach, I can see where that would be hugely valuable. I think this would be valuable to me to put on my resume so that I can understand the lingua franca when I go in and talk to Apple about a job. And it's a corollary to that is I know that the certificate is only open for, I think it's once you finished is it your 6th semester?
Yeah, they use all this arcane language that's not ours. I think it's the anti-penultimate semester, which, by the way, has confused people. Like, who the hell uses language like that? Just say your 6th semester. You pretty much have to decide between your 6th and your 7th semester and commit. And the universities, to be honest with you, I think ridiculously stringent about that. There were a couple of people who came to us as seniors and said, "Oh, we've taken 5 courses, we've taken them all, and we didn't realize there was such a stringent deadline. Can we now sign up for it?" And the university didn't let them. I actually don't know why that is, because you can decide pretty much at the last minute that you've satisfied the requirements for a concentration and just sign up and they'll allow you. I don't know why. But again, what I said to them was, you're going to have a brilliant career. And the fact that you can't officially document a certificate in entrepreneurship won't matter at all. And so don't worry about it.
Why would it not be? Why, if I am a freshman or a sophomore, why would I not be able to take any of these courses?
You can take the courses. That's not the issue. It's whether you can you officially declare a certificate.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Which again seems like ridiculous bureaucracy, but I didn't invent that, and somehow we have to be we have to uphold it. I do think there is some method to the madness. You have to have declared your concentration first before you can declare a certificate. It's sort of like you have to declare the major before the minor. That's maybe a bad reference because it's not a minor, but you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
And that's good because Brown wants you to experiment a lot. And what's funny is I see a lot of first semester first years who say that they are, they have entrepreneurship certificate on their email signature. And I know that can't be the case because you can't do it until your junior year, but it signals to me that there's a lot of people who are identifying even informally that way, and they value it. I'm approached by lots of applicants to Brown who are very interested in the Nelson Center and very interested in the certificate program. They're a little bit confused by all the lingo, like what's the difference between a certificate and a concentration, but I know people are essentially considering themselves a certificateer, even though I know they can't officially be, and that's okay. I'm happy that they're thinking of that. I do want to get back to the question you were saying about, if you're a French concentrator, and what kind of trade-offs might you be making? And even I want to push back against what I think you were saying about, well, is it really something you're going to use your French poetry of the 16th century in your career sometime? I think I don't want people to be thinking of entrepreneurship at all, let alone the certificate, is the practical thing you could do at Brown, versus like the humanities, which is that, indulgent intellectual exercise. I mean, some of the most successful, I don't know what it is about this concentration, but some of the most successful entrepreneurs I've met, alumni who I've met in my time being the head of the Nelson Center, were semiotics concentrators. And they tell me they don't believe that that's why they were semiotics concentrators. It's not like they said, oh, we're going to major in semiotics and that's our pathway to entrepreneurial success. But it didn't hold them back either.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was a history concentrator. Brown is a wonderful liberal arts place. And frankly, if you said to me in your, second semester, junior year, hey, I've got a limited number of courses that I could take. I've got, 12 more courses. And I'm thinking about I'm just getting started. I'm going to take 5 of them to satisfy the entrepreneurship certificate, which would leave only 7 for other things. I would say, don't do that. Take Dietrich Neumann's modern architectural history course. Take Arnold Weinstein's Swedish literature course. Take Ralph Rodriguez's Color Me Cool graphic novels and comics course. Take Barbara Tenenbaum's public speaking course. Take Professor Marone's city politics course. Take a sculpture course at RISD. The life of a college student is short, and I would say, dig into some entrepreneurship, but not at the expense of taking that 16th century French literature course. I mean, let's face it, when are you going to take a sculpture class from RISD, if not now? And so I'm a huge proponent of liberal arts and the humanities, even if it ends up being at the expense of getting an entrepreneurship certificate. So here again, I'm not a blind advocate for a certificate in entrepreneurship. I think it has its purpose, its role. I'm thrilled about how it's been going. But I know that people for a long time have been living without a certificate credential and being really successful in whatever they do. And the courses they remember from Brown are ones that have nothing to do with, entrepreneurship. So I hope I'm balanced there.
You had mentioned that high school students, let's just say prospective students,
yes,
are very interested in this. I would assume also that their parents are also kind of looking at that. Have you found, Danny, that the admissions people have asked you, a little bit more about this so that they could promote it?
Yes, I'm paraded in front of lots of different kinds of prospective student groups. I do a lot of work also for the athletic teams when I'm answering questions about the curriculum at Brown, and I give them tours of the Nelson Center and their jaws drop because they can't believe there's a place like that. But again, I'm the first one to say, I'm not here to promote entrepreneurship. I'm here to answer questions about the whole curriculum. And if you want to be a comparative literature concentrator, first of all, there's no reason you should know that now, because actually the first thing you should do is experiment and try new things and take different kinds of courses. And I even say my real advice is don't take courses, take professors. Like all the professors I just named are some of the all-stars at Brown. It doesn't make any difference what they teach. They're great teachers. And so take those. And I think partly it's who tends to self-select to come to Brown and who is selected to come to Brown. It's students who thrive in an environment like that, where they're going to make connections between, Balzac and, Elon Musk. And so, I love that about Brown, and I don't want Brown to be, this is one of the reasons why I think the faculty felt like I was credible when I was trying to propose a certificate. They weren't hearing me say Brown needs to be teaching, business for undergrads, and we need a business school and a business major. No, that's not what entrepreneurship is at Brown. And I'd be, again, the first person to say, I would give higher priority to the humanities that Brown is so great at than I might even to the entrepreneurship curriculum. But what's great about the certificate is you can do both. You can be a comparative literature concentrator or an art history concentrator like you might have wanted to be, and take 5 courses in entrepreneurship, and then you can have both. And yeah, I do think parents are really enjoying that opportunity, and I hope nevertheless the students are making their own decisions.
What I'm hearing is that what's important here is how an institution defines entrepreneurship first and foremost, and then develops whatever kind of curriculum that they are going to develop. What do you mean by entrepreneurship? Is entrepreneurship, it's about launching companies, right? I
So
mean,
you're absolutely right. That is the first principle. You may remember when we got started in our first interview, I made sure that we were clear about that, because I've had discussions with people where I wasn't clear about that. I don't mean recently, I've learned my lesson, but where we're like veering off track because they think entrepreneurship is something that I don't think. And then I realized, oh my God, we're speaking totally different languages. And so you're right. If we taught entrepreneurship as a business minor or a business major, then you would conceive of a certificate maybe as a business minor. And I know that's true in lots of places. And I'm not trying to be condescending about it. It's fine if that's, other really good places want to teach it that way. It's just not the way we teach it. And so again, when I was explaining this to the faculty who had to vote on a certificate in entrepreneurship, and they heard, entrepreneurship, a problem-solving methodology, how could we resist that? And again, the evidence speaks for itself. Even before the certificate numbers, when we've had thousands and thousands of students who came to us to learn how to solve problems, and I'm incredibly proud of that. That makes the world a better place. We have too many problems and not enough problem solvers.
So what about where do the tools come in? And what I mean by tools are, let me just say, design thinking, business model canvas, lean startup, those kind of, very defined tools for starting companies, that kind of defined entrepreneurship.
You'll find them throughout the curriculum.
So they'll be, they get woven in then, is that?
Yeah, they're not like extra. Oh, you signed up for the certificate. Here's Eric Ries's book. Or you signed up for the certificate, get to know Steve Blank. Or, you signed up for the certificate. Do you know what, go down the hill and learn a design thinking approach from RISD. No, those are woven into the courses that are throughout the curriculum. And by the way, we have the courses that we've identified and sanctioned to be electives for the certificate are only a subset of the entrepreneurship related courses that we've identified throughout the university. So the link I shared with you identifies the ones that are sanctioned for the purpose of the certificate. We had our criteria for those, but we're not shy about also listing on our website, I'll give you the link to this, even more courses that we think are still worth promoting.
Okay. All right.
And so part of this was strategic. I was advised, and I think it was good advice, in the proposal, have fewer courses than we might ultimately sanction, because the more you have, the more people can be critical of any particular course. But also beyond the politics, it's just, we wanted to start with, it's seesaw scale. So we didn't want to start with an enormously scaled list of courses. We said, let's get comfortable with the ones that we think really are a bullseye for a certificate. And then gradually, it's our own bottom-up research throughout the, yearish, a little over that we've had students in the program. Some have come to us to say, hey, I took this course. It's not on the list as an approved elective. I'd like to petition for it to be approved. And we have a faculty committee that will make those decisions on whether it does adhere to the criteria and whether it's an appropriate one.
Going back to then my hypothesis that a certificate in entrepreneurship is, you could almost wrap again, this is a hypothesis, and I'm saying you can do it, but if you don't have an entrepreneurship center, can you wrap an entrepreneurship center around a certificate for entrepreneurship? Because the certificate for entrepreneurship addresses so many of the other accomplishments that a university wants to achieve, cross-disciplinary interaction and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that hypothesis?
It's a little hard for me to, extract the key components of what we have, because as I said before, they all kind of intermingle. So, if you get excited about a lecture you come to see, a co-curricular event, it might turn you on to taking a course. That course might turn you on or might have given you exposure to developing the rudiments of a venture that you might want to use to enter the Brown Venture Prize competition or our Summer Accelerator B-Lab. So at least the way we think about it, and I'm so focused on that, all these components intermingle. If what you're saying is, could you start the process with a certificate program and have a center evolve around it where, eventually you could have co-curricular things. Frankly, the co-curricular are a little bit easier than the curricular. So I could see that evolving. Could you imagine the venture support components that we have evolving out of those? Yeah, I don't think you have to have it all at once. I feel a little bit reckless saying so, without really having time to think it through, but or experiencing it. But I think, the way we solve every problem is see, solve, scale. I think if you start on an embryonic level, and maybe I think what bothers me about that premise is that it's the certificate is, and I know from the process it took for us to get it approved, the certificate is actually one of the most formal and bureaucratic parts of our whole offering, that I worry a little bit that starting there is just probably not the right place to start. I would think actually maybe the co-curricular components would be an easier place. See who is just self-selecting to come to workshops or events or speakers. Might they be interested in doing some things more formally? That may not work at some places because nothing happens unless it's going through the curriculum and you have actual 4-credit bearing things. But if I were to just wave a magic wand, I'd say start what's your MVP? And actually, I don't know that a certificate is an MVP. In fact, remember, we didn't start by creating a certificate. We did a whole bunch of other things first. And then we knew enough, I think, so that when the provost said, we'd like you to do this, and he knew enough even to ask us, right? He knew, you guys could probably handle this. I think it'd be hard to start with something that is so formal with no track record. And then I think, because I've been approached by lots of people in charge of entrepreneurship at lots of other campuses, especially ones where they're dominantly liberal arts. And there's been so much pushback to them because they do think of it as pre-professional or practical or, anti-humanities. I think if that were the first thing you needed the faculty to sign off on, that'd be pretty tough. Whereas if you developed a track record first more informally, I think you'd probably be in a better position to get that accomplished. I told you I'm doing things for the military, universities, big nonprofits, governments, big companies. They do this. They go from C, and they don't even do this very well, but if they do this at all, they go right from here to here. And they skip the iterative, experimental, innovative stage. And I've had this conversation with people at Brown even, where they say, I say, like, why are you out of the gate proposing that you've got like the perfect solution to a problem that you're going to layer a ton of resources on? Because when you realize that you were wrong, it will have been very costly to rewind and do what I'm telling you should do in the first place, which is to start small, fail fast, fail cheap, iterate, don't make a big splash. We didn't have a building when we got started. We were in this tiny little office in Hillel, I think I mentioned to you, just some spare office space. That was a great thing. We would not have known at all what our building should look like until 3.5 years into it. We had it, and then we knew. But if you had said to me, even if you had given me the money and said on the first day, we want you to start building a building and start scaling, I would have said, no, that's absolutely violating the principles of C-solve scale. So I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I'm not surprised that that the group you're working with has that mentality. And I would advise exactly the opposite. Do your bottom-up research and really figure out what the problems are you're going to solve. Don't be a solution in search of a problem. And don't even think about scaling until you're really sure that what you've iterated enough is worth scaling. And I can't tell you how many times I see the opposite.
That's what I'm trying to do with them. And, it's the, I've proposed that, a three-phased approach where phase one is primary research across maybe 30 different stakeholder groups. And what they want to do is they're talking about, well, we want an incubator and an accelerator. And I said, that is years down the road.
Calm down.
Exactly. I said, you can, if you start that way, you're going to fail. And
also, by the way, I mean, one real advantage that we had is this beloved provost who I mentioned, Rick Locke, spent 25 years at Sloan at MIT, and his field is entrepreneurship, global entrepreneurship. So I couldn't have waved a magic wand better to have a partner. I mean, he reached out to me to ask me if I would do this. And I thought, how could there be a better, and he said, we'll be partners in this. The truth is he's left me alone, and I think he's got, like any provost, so many fires to put out that the last thing he needs is another one. And he's thrilled that, we're thriving and successful. But it's certainly an advantage to have a provost who really understands when I told him what my definition of entrepreneurship is, he pulled out his definition. He said, it's exactly the same as what he's always used at MIT, problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So we were aligned. I think at the group you're talking about, it's possible that nobody knows what entrepreneurship is, in which case, I don't know how the hell you would do that.
I appreciate that. Danny, thank you so very much. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'll hear from you whenever you need me next.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.